Hey guys, it's Eric at SideQuest Comics, and welcome into another art video. This is the second one that I'm doing, and today's project, so I'm starting a new project, is going to be for my buddy Dope Comics. I am pre-recording this, so I'm going to probably try to finish the whole drawing and then give it to him and then release the video type of thing, kind of like what I did with the last one for Hagen and Captain America. And this project actually is kind of, I'm doing a mashup for him of his favorite characters. So, I got my paper for my pads ready. And I kind of want to, for this second one, try something a little bit different and keep it a little bit quicker for you guys. The last one was about an hour long, and I did fast track some of the different steps. But once again, what I want to do is just kind of show off the process of creating this project from, the pencils to watercolor to inking. And then by the end, show you a final product. I had a lot of fun doing that. I did the voiceover and stuff to kind of give you guys a little bit of information without overloading you too much of the process of creating it. So it was a lot of fun, and I wanted to do it again for you guys. Now, getting this project ready, I was trying to use the same kind of paper, but the sketch that I did, let me show you guys the sketch, ended up being a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. So it did not want to fit on the regular paper here. So what I end up having to do is I have downstairs in my art area where all my art supplies and stuff were, I have full sheets of watercolor. So this is like a full sheet. I think it's like 26 by 30 something sheet. Look, I can't even fit it all in there. I have to go way back here. So you guys can see how big it was. So I took one of these and I actually cut it down to basically a kind of a general size. So at least that, if I wanted to frame it, you can find a frame for this thing. And I did transfer it to save time. Like I said, I wanted to kind of try some different things and save time. I did already transfer it onto the big piece of paper. So as you can see, it's kind of a difference. So hopefully you find something to fit this. But what I want to do starting off, jumping right into it, is I want to, since I did kind of transfer the sketch onto my watercolor, I want to kind of fine tune it, because like I said, this is the time where I can kind of fix stuff. I already did kind of change a couple things just transferring it. So I just want to go through it real quick and, just kind of define stuff for me. Because once I get into the actual inking process, I may still be able to change stuff. But at that point, after watercolors are added, I might not have a bunch of wiggle room. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, because I want to keep this shorter for you guys. So what we're going to do is go to my table down view, and I'm going to start doing the pencils and fine tuning the drawing onto the watercolor paper. And then we'll continue the process like I did in the last video, where I just stop it, move to a different section of the creation process. Let's go ahead and go down and jump into this new project of Art Scribbles. Okay, guys, a little change of scene here. Table down. Let me go over some of the stuff real quick. So we got our paper that we can't use. Like I said, I usually use this one, but I had to cut some custom paper so the drawing would fit. As you can see, yeah, it would have just been too big. I actually kind of was drawing this to the size, but then decided to extend it up a bit. So we're not going with that paper. So let's put that to the side. And then, I got my pencils, my nice little set that I went over last time. You can get these at any art supply store. But today I am actually, so I used those for my sketch already. I am going to be, finalizing the transfer, which I wanted to do to save time. So we got this. So I'm going to go through it, kind of compare it, fix stuff that I didn't like. When I transferred it, I don't know if you can tell on the drawing, I actually moved this twirling section. This is 8-Ball, by the way. And 8-Ball's twirling his pool cue. And in my sketch, I made it a little bit too high. And, some of the actual cue was a little off perspective. So I kind of tried to fix it in the transfer. And then yeah, so it basically lowers it, so it actually perspective wise and everything it works better. But yeah, and I changed a couple things with the motorcycle and some of the knees here of this character. So let's go ahead and start getting to this, so then we can get into watercolors for the next step, and then finally inking. So let's jump into finishing my pencils for the orb and 8-ball. This is usually the point that I spend a lot of time fixing stuff, and I am fixing a little bit here. I'm kind of erasing some of the lines that are just a little bit too dark, and I didn't want them to show up through the watercolor, but I did such a good job on the sketch. This is probably my fastest finalizing pencils. All right, well, there wasn't a whole lot to do. I fixed a lot of the pencils when I transferred this, guys. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. Like I said, I did change a little bit of the position of his legs on the orb there, and I changed this. So there really wasn't a whole lot to fix. If there is anything else, I'll probably fix it in the inking stage. So this was actually a rather quick pencils, and especially when I speed it up for you guys. It's something that I'm going to do for the other two sections too, with the watercolor and the inking, because I'm assuming that process is going to be a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and I'll reset for watercolor, which I'm not sure exactly what watercolors I'm going to use. I might change it up a bit. So let's go ahead and we'll fast forward a little bit to that. Okay, guys, so I got my drawing all put on this board, which I wanted to do last time. I wetted it, I stapled it down, so it's kind of like stretching a painting canvas, so it makes it nice and flat. It'll keep it flat when I'm adding colors. And this is basically just, I believe this is called a masonite board. I mean, you can get these at the home store. They use them for, in place of like plywood, or I think you can put it in behind shower construction. It's part of a construction of walls and stuff like that. I've had this so long I can't remember exactly what it's called. If you guys remember or know, let me know. It's basically just like a composite board that I can pull the staples out easily, and I've been using this for years for watercolor. But yeah, so we're going to use that today. I got it all stapled down and ready to go. I got my paint brushes. I probably got way too many, but you can never have enough of a variety of paper towel in case I make a mess. And I'm using actually just some backer board for a palette here. And I got my water, and I kind of mentioned I wanted to do something different. So I have this cool travel watercolor set. It's got the little paint cakes in it. But I was thinking of, and I have all these same colors. I was thinking of using my old school paint palette, which is this sucker. You can see how old it is. It's actually kind of stained yellow from sunlight and whatnot. But the reason I didn't use this last time is you could see all my colors are pretty much the same. They're all dried out. So they're just dried pigment cakes that basically need water to reactivate them. So I'm thinking about using this because some of these colors I really like, whereas those are nice, but they're a little small. I might try to use this one for this project. So why don't we do this? I'm going to go ahead. I'll fast track this. I'm going to activate these by adding water, and I'm going to jump into painting and adding colors to this drawing of the orb and 8-ball. Just a real quick re-soaking of my watercolor cakes here. Some of these colors have been in this palette for so long that they are dried out. They haven't been used in a long time. So it's just a simple matter of adding water, letting them soak, and then kind of mixing them up a little bit just to get those pigments reactivated. So I know this is very exciting stuff, but this is unnecessary when you have paints that have been sitting around a little bit. They're not garbage, you just need to reactivate them and bring them back to life. Okay, guys, so I cut a little bit of that out because I know that's really exciting television there. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into adding some tones. Let me grab my reference real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with light tones. So I'm going to start with all my kind of my warm colors like the yellows and reds and stuff like that. And then I'll kind of tone it down with the cool colors, the blues, purples, and then even some neutral colors like the browns and the greens. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And I'll fast track this one so it's a little bit easier to digest. So after I wet the area that I want to paint so the paint actually flows a little bit better, I am jumping into the warm colors, my yellows, reds, oranges, which are basically the highlighted areas, the hot spots. I always like to start with that because it's always easier to fix those warm tones, the light tones, over like your darker, cooler tones. So I'm dabbing it here just a little bit because of course I added a little bit too much water or a little bit too much paint. So I'm kind of just diluting it down a little bit better to my liking. Now these two areas I'm working on right now on the orb and 8-ball are supposed to be white, but in reality, in like art and stuff, there really is no pure white. So I'm kind of doing it an off-white, a dirty white. It just makes it a little bit grittier looking or you know, just almost realistic looking that there is no pure white. So I'm making it like an off-white using the browns and oranges to just give it that kind of darker tone. Now something I kind of wanted to do a little bit more with this video that I didn't do the last time with Captain America was talk a little bit more about my materials I'm using. Now last time I talked a little bit more about like concept of painting and colors and stuff like that, but I thought it would be cool to bring up the point of what I'm using is basically with the paints, it's a Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor. Now, it's kind of my go-to watercolor that I like using because you can reactivate it like I had to with this. But I do have some other colors in there that I like using that are different brands like Liquitex, and another one I like using is Grumbacher. Now, these are just like little tubes of paint that I add to these. You kind of have to, you know, squeeze them out and add water, and depending on how much water you use or how much actual pigment you use will kind of determine how intense of color your paint is. And in reality, it's just like a toothpaste tube too that you just squirt out and you can go. jumping into my cool colors already because, you know, I'd like to jump around a little bit, but this cool color is a little bit different. So 8-Ball here, his costume's actually black, and a lot of times in comics what they do as a highlight for black is they use this bluish, kind of almost a sky blue color, and that's kind of what I'm doing right here. So I'm laying down some of my highlighted areas for his black costume that when later I go to ink it, a lot of this is gonna end up turning into black, but I'm gonna be able to leave some of those highlighted areas and you're gonna have some color to it. Now I just realized you're probably wondering why I'm going back over the same area that I just went over. Well, what I'm doing is, yeah, I'm jumping around a little bit, but also by putting down that first layer of color on his costume and then jumping to another spot, I'm giving the paint and water a chance to kind of set, to dry a little bit. That way it's easier to go back in and add like a second layer or even like basically a darker tone. So I'm slowly building up that tone through layers, and I have to do that by giving that area a little bit of time to kind of just dry a little bit so I don't smear the paint or basically just make it a big mush. Back to some red warm colors, but not because I'm highlighting or anything, but basically I wanted to jump onto the Orb's red outfit. So in reality what I'm doing here is I'm working from top to bottom kind of in a diagonal pattern. Just that way I'm not putting my hand in wet paint or you know, a wet surface. So that's kind of a bit of what this is, and like I said, I do like to jump around a bit, so it's not so much a warm color, cool color, because I already did all my warm highlights. This is just starting to lay down some flats so I kind of see what I got going on and where I need to add some more, maybe some shadows and stuff. One of the other art tools that I want to talk about that I don't think I talked about in my last video with Captain America was paintbrushes. Now, I use a lot of different paintbrushes, and it's really kind of a preference thing. You can spend lots of money on, you know, the name brands. I use everything from Liquitex makes their own brushes. You know, there's a lot of different brushes that you can get out there that you can spend a lot of money on, that you can find at the art supply stores and stuff like that. But it's okay to get those variety packs. Like they have the variety packs called Artist Loft, which gives you you know, 9 different brushes sometimes, anywhere from flat to liners to rounds. And I tend to use a lot of the rounds just because they're easier to do my style of painting, my way of applying watercolors and paints and stuff like that. One of the things of advice that I can give about brushes when you want to get a certain brush is kind of test them out a little bit. You know, at the store, hold them, kind of pretend like you're painting to see how they feel in your hand, because a lot of times if it just doesn't feel right in your hands, why are you going to use that brush? So that's kind of a big thing. And I tend to stick to brushes that are natural hairs, just because they hold the paint and pigment a little bit better than something that's going to be a synthetic hair brush. Now the downside of that is that natural brushes are harder to clean, and usually they wear out a lot quicker. So that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind when you're getting your art brushes and different tools. But like I said, a lot of times it's a matter of preference. There is no right or wrong, and it really depends what your budget is and what you're willing to spend. But when it comes to brushes, kind of like pencils and stuff like that, it's never a bad thing to have more than one style or one brand. It's always good to have, as they say, a bunch of tools in the toolbox so you can do the craft. Getting back to the color layout here, I'm really starting to get close to the ending here of putting down all my basic base colors. I'm going over, as you see, a lot of the same areas again and again, making them richer and darker and adding shadows, and kind of coming down to the home stretch of what I like to be at when I'm moving on to the next step of a drawing, which is going to be inking. So a little bit more here of colors and it'll be ready to move to the next step. I did switch to a thinner brush here, a liner, to add some finer details in the color layout here. And in some of the areas I didn't quite like how blue and cool they were, so I went back and I added a little bit of a brown tone to it. And I needed this thinner brush because here I'm doing a little bit more detail work on striping on his costume, and with my big round brushes that's just too big to do this kind of detail work. So a liner brush right here is what you really need to do the job. I grabbed that new little paint set that I had because these colors are pure and new in here, and I'm doing a little bit of mixing of some of my old colors with the new colors. I really wanted kind of a brand new, clean, new colors mixing here. I wasn't really liking some of the colors on my old palette there, so I'm kind of starting from fresh a little bit and getting more of the tone that I wanted. And as you see on the palette is when I'm really kind of experimenting and looking for that right color that I wanted for this exhaust smoke dirt from the motorcycle they're riding. So it took me a little bit of time, but I got just the right tone that I wanted for the look. And sometimes when I'm adding colors like I am here at the end of the layouts for the color are more like a suggestion and a guideline, because a lot of times I will go back in after I ink it, and sometimes while I'm inking, maybe I didn't like the way it was looking, so I'll go back and I have a new idea or view of how I want it to look. So this is something that I will revisit as I'm working on the project, and as we're getting down to the end here, it is pretty much set for colors, but like I said, I may revisit a little bit. All right, guys, so I got this all set with my base colors. I need to let it dry now. I may come back in after it dries and add maybe a little bit more darker areas, maybe brighten up some of the areas, like add some more yellows or oranges like that. But I think I got this pretty much where I want, so I can start inking it a little bit. So I got to let this dry. I may grab my blow dryer and blow it dry so I can jump right into it, but we will do a little time travel here and let this dry, and I'll probably come back with this all set up and ready for inks. Okay, guys, I'm almost done cleaning up, and you know what? I actually almost forgot to talk about this being mounted to this board. Now, I mentioned that I stretched this out when it was wet, and then it dried, it tightens it up, so when you're working on it, it keeps it from rippling up. And let me pull this up. I'll show you how easy it is. It's just stapled to this, and you just gotta be a little careful that you don't tear the paper like I just did there. And because this is a little bit thinner paper, but yeah, I'm just pulling this up. Let me do this, and I'll come back and I'll show you a closer look of it. Okay, there we go, guys. I got it off the board. I had to kind of put it on pause and focus because I did start to tear it a little bit there. This paper is actually thinner than what I'm used to using. But there we go. It's all set and ready to ink. Give you guys a little bit of a close-up of the washes. I didn't go back in with colors because I decided, you know what, I don't want to get super detailed in the colors. And I moved all my paints out of the way, so we're back to this view for the table. And this was actually what I used, if I flip it, for my inking right there. So I'm going to continue using this. So I got my ink pens. I got these, which I might end up using because some of these are like markers, so they're a little bit thicker. And my erasers and pencils if I want to maybe make some quick references with the pencil. But let's go ahead. I'll speed this up once again, and we'll get into inking. Starting at the top and starting with my thinnest ink pen, I'm basically just starting to determine what my lines are for the twirling pool cue here. I often do a lot of twisting and turning, and like my watercolors, I do like to jump around a bit. So I am jumping around here, laying out kind of just the form a little bit, and a lot of times I will go back in like the paints and do another pass at it to maybe thicken up a line, because a lot of inking is line work basically, and determining how thick that line is. How thick a line is basically, it's like how much of a shadow is on that side of the form. So that's what I mean about when I say the thickness of the line or the weight of the line. So it's a concept that I've always found interesting in inking, and it's something that I like to explore and play with. It's just I do have to have this starting point with the layouts of my line work and using kind of the thin lines, and then, like I said, going back in and, you know, adjusting. I'm trying to be real careful here and make sure my lines are nice and straight and even, and really make sure that I'm not skewing them. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm kind of using my little mat board there that I'm putting my hand on to help me keep that line nice and straight. I'm kind of using the imaginary eye a little bit and just following the line through. Lots of twisting here. I wanted to make sure that when I'm drawing 8-Ball's head here being a circle and round, that I don't make it look like an egg. So yeah, I'm spinning that around so I don't have to move my hand and arm in an awkward position, just because it's a little bit easier, and it helps me make sure that it's not egg shape. Same thing for the orb here. Even though his head is colored like an egg, we don't want him to have an egg shape either. Started doing some of the detail work already with the thinnest pen that I had there, but I kind of switched off to the thicker one just to fill in that eyeball a little bit. Sometimes I do this, once again, jumping around, mainly because it helps me see the final image of the product a little bit more, and it helps me kind of move along of determining what needs more shadow, what needs more inking, a thicker line here and there, that type of thing. So a lot of times I do that just because I'm in that area and I feel it in the moment. It's starting to look like something, guys. As you see, I am slowly working down from top to bottom and still kind of setting up with the thinner pen what the actual form is going to look like. I am kind of adding a little bit of detail as I go here, but as you see there, it's really starting to come together. I do have quite a ways to go. This inking section was the longest part for this video, and I tried to speed it up as much as I could, but in reality, it's just one of those things. It's a more complex drawing, so there's a lot more detail work that I had to cover. Now, once I do start filling in some of the darker shadow areas like 8 Ball's costume, will it really start to look like it's complete? So I'll just continue going along here, and then eventually I will start doing those shadows. A little bit of a zoom in to kind of change it up a bit so you guys can see some of the detail a little bit better. As I just keep plugging away at the inking, I'm getting closer to getting the motorcycle done. Okay, now I'm getting down to where the motorcycle's bottom is, and I'm starting to do the tire and the tread. And reality here, I wasn't sure how I wanted the tread to look. I didn't know if I wanted it to be very, gritty, sketchy type of look. Did I want it well defined? So this actually was a process that kind of evolved as I was working on it. I determined that, yeah, I didn't like it. It wasn't dark enough, so then I started thickening the lines. And then I started doing more cross hatching because I wanted it darker, but maybe I wanted it to be more textured. So yeah, this tire and the bottom of the motorcycle really evolved as I was going. You see me kind of looking back at it here and there, and that's because I'm kind of looking to see, well, does that work? Does that work? Is it dark enough? Ongoing process. A lot of times that happens with inking and drawings. And you sometimes change in the whole middle of inking, like I kind of did with the motorcycle. Okay, here we go. Diving into that motorcycle tire finally. I was putting it off a little bit, but I am at that point where I just got to jump in and start doing it. So I basically decided to start with the tread. Let's determine what the tread is. And then from there, I was darkening some of the lines. And like I said, some of the, I started doing some cross hatching with it. But once again, right away, I am distracted and I started doing some of the smoke lines. I will get back to it, I promise. I just realized right here that I didn't finish drawing out 8-Ball's leg. So, not a distraction, but a realization that I totally missed drawing out this leg. So I wanted to jump on it right away. And some of this is just, I wanted the drawing to feel complete, you know, like basically close all those open lines. And like I said, eventually I will get back to that tire of the motorcycle, because right now I'm already starting to look at the lines, how the weight of them looks, how thick they are, how, you know, dark they may make the figure appear. So I'm already starting to go over lines that I already drew and just make them a little bit thicker and richer, kind of making the shadow stronger that way. As you saw right there, I reached over and grabbed a different marker from that other set that I have. And this is, like I said, marker, not ink pen. And I grabbed this because it's got a much thicker tip to it that is like a marker. So I'm starting to fill in all those shadows now. And, you know, the basically your black blocks that make the shadows. And it's just easier to do with this pen. I like this set a lot because it is thicker. You can get work done quicker. The inking just seems to go faster that way when it's that thicker tip. Look at this drawing really starting to come together and change right here. Just all by using a much thicker tip ink pen, marker, whichever you prefer, but it's really speeding the process along, and it's really starting to look like a completed drawing. Now, once I do start doing 8-Ball, boy, is it really gonna change and look like a different drawing. Let's zoom in a little bit here for a couple minutes while I'm working on this super fine detail, so you guys can see the work, while fast, a little bit clearer of me working those fine details. I thought it'd be kind of cool to just get a closer look at some of the detail work that I'm doing, even though it is fast speed, but you can see the progress a little bit better. And my big old head was starting to get in the way. some more work on that motorcycle tire right there with that thicker marker. Really starting to push back the tire tread and the detail of it with the thicker marker and bringing out some more of those shadows. And of course, I gotta go back over some of those shadow lines and the figures too. Pretty soon I'm going to be jumping into 8-Ball there and darkening his black costume. You can already see some of the outlines that I drew for his shadows and where the highlights will be. It's just a matter of me working back up to that point. Okay, so here's where the drawing is going to really start to look different. I'm starting to do all those dark shadows in 8-Ball, and it's really going to make a big change in the drawing. Always doing kind of those thick dark blacks is really going to make the picture look like it's done. So we're getting close to the end here, and of course, I think I do end up nitpicking a little bit after I get a lot of this done here. It's just a natural thing that you do with drawings, that it is never quite done. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and finish watching me add those last finishing touches with the dark shadows, and we'll go ahead and close out in a little bit here. last little bit of details here right at the end of the drawing. And of course, I saved 8Ball's head for last. I don't know if it's best for last, but it's one of those things that I felt like it was going to be the one thing that once I colored in, the big part of his head is shadow, it was going to feel complete. So it kind of makes sense to me a little bit that this is the last thing that I'm doing in the drawing. And like I said, I may pick a little bit here and there, and I think I do after the fact. After the video, I went back in and I did do a little bit of picking here and there with more of a mixed media type of thing. I brought in some color pencils, so actually the very end I post up the drawing. I think you can see some of the color pencils in that one. I wanted to get back on here before we went back up to close out, and thank you guys for watching this. I know this inking section here is a lot longer than the last one, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys had any kind of questions in the process, I do hope you enjoyed watching this process of doing a piece of artwork from the drawing to watercolor to inking. Don't hesitate to ask. Send me an email, make a comment in this video online, anything. If you had questions about the whole process, please feel free that you can reach out and talk to me and ask me questions. Even if it's just something of what brand marker and pens are you using? Something as little as that. I love the whole process of creating through a drawing, and if somebody's interested in jumping in or doing their own stuff, like I know Stevie D, for example, has been doing it, I love being there and being a helping hand. So like I said, don't hesitate to ask, and thanks you guys for sticking with this one and watching. All right, guys. Well, I've been working on this inking for about an hour and a half. This was a rather bigger picture and more work than I thought it would be, but I think it's pretty much done. I just got to put a little signature on there, and I may pick and add a little bit here and there after I kind of sit on it for a day, but that's about it for this project. So let's go ahead and go up, and we will close this one out. Well, there you go, guys. This Art Scribbles is all done and set. This one ended up being a little bit longer than I thought because this picture that I was doing for Dope was pretty intricate. This was kind of one of his dream pair-ups that he said a long time ago that I thought was kind of funny, and I put it in the back of my mind for if I ever did anything, and here we go. So there is the Orb and 8Ball teaming up and raising hell. So this was a lot of fun to do. A lot more work than I thought, but I think it turned out pretty good. I'll take a nice big picture and put it up here so you guys can take a good look at it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of detail that went into this. I tried to hold back on colors. I did save a little bit of time in pencils because my sketch was so good that when I transferred it, I didn't really have to do a whole lot to it, that it was pretty much how exactly I wanted it. What took the most time wasn't the watercolor, because I kept that pretty minimal too. It was the inking. So there's a lot of surfaces in here to go through and ink, but I think it turned out pretty good. I'm excited to give this to Dope, and I'm excited to see his reaction. So I do have some more projects in the works. This was only the second Art Scribbles that I did, and you know, they'll probably be coming up soon. I'm going to save both of these, releasing them. So this is a little bit later after I did it. So you guys might end up seeing these on those guys' channel. I don't know. That's what I'm hoping. I'm going to let them have fun with it first before I show, you know, the whole process of it. But that is it for this one, the second one. If you guys could please give me a subscribe to the channel, give me a like, and comment down below. What did you like about seeing this walkthrough of this drawing? Did you have any questions about the process? I tried to do a voiceover for these again during the speed up parts, just because it helps break it up. And I hope I was clear with explaining stuff, type of thing, where, you know, what I was doing, why I was doing it, that type of thing. So if you guys have comments or questions about any of the stuff that you saw in the video, let me know down below. And hey, while you're at it, head over to Instagram, give me a follow there. You can see some of my posts that I do over there, whether it's a theme post for a comic or maybe it's just a Wednesday haul. So go ahead and do that. I appreciate it. But that's it today, guys. Let's get out of here, this art video. It's a long one. I appreciate you guys staying tuned and watching the whole thing. Even if you come back and forth type of thing, I can understand that. But until next time, guys, happy questing, and we will talk to you next time.